When all else fails, what do the Democrats do? They change the English language as we know it. You're watching the Millennial Conservative YouTube channel. If you guys like my videos, please feel free to give my channel a subscribe and like and share out all my videos. So we have this here from Fox News. Merriam-Webster changes its definition of sexual preference as Barrett gets called out for using the term. So the Democrats don't have anything on Amy Coney Barrett. They don't have any sort of real concrete things to go at her about, to go after her for. So what do they do right now? They nitpick. And this is what the Democrats do best. They've been saying that trying to nominate Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court right now, just before the election, is court packing. They literally have been coming out now saying that trying to get a nomination put through prior to an election, despite the fact that we elected the president and we elected a Republican Senate to do just this very thing, despite that, they're saying it shouldn't be done. And somehow now it's considered court packing when that couldn't be further from the truth, considering the fact that we're just replacing the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who recently passed away. That's what's going on right now. We're replacing a judge who passed. It's not court packing, but nonetheless, they have literally nothing to go after Amy Coney Barrett for. So now they're literally trying to change the English language to make her out to be something she's not. And they're trying to go after her for her stance on the LGBTQ community. You know, being she's a Christian, chances are she may not agree with gay marriage. So now they're trying to hammer her on this terminology that she used. So it says here, Merriam-Webster Dictionary changed its definition of sexual preference to include the word offensive as Democrats slammed Supreme Court nominee Judge Amy Coney Barrett for using the term during Tuesday's Senate confirmation hearings. Prior to Tuesday, the fifth definition listed for preference referred to orientation as in sexual preference. But as of Wednesday, the fifth definition for preference included the word offensive when used to describe sexual orientation. So you have a tweet here from Steve Krakauer, and he goes, as recently as last month, Webster's dictionary included a definition of preference as orientation or sexual preference. Today, they changed it and added the word offensive. Insane. I just checked through the Wayback Machine, and it's real. So this is what they do. When they can't win at something, they change the rules. And that's exactly what they're trying to do here with Amy Coney Barrett. They're trying to change the rules. And they're trying to paint her as something she's not, because they have nothing of value or substance to go at her on. She is an upstanding person. Her and her husband adopted kids from Haiti, so they can't go after her trying to claim that she's somehow racist. So what do? They try and pull the LGBTQ card and say that somehow she's against people, against gays, essentially. That's essentially what they're trying to say, to put it bluntly. It says here, our scheduled updates, which add new words and also add new definitions, usage guidance, and examples, and example sentences to existing dictionary entries, take place several times a year. So it says that they generally update their definitions and whatnot a few times throughout the year, but they had to suddenly make a sudden exception. They had to really get in there right away and make an exception because of this Supreme Court nomination hearing. So it says from time to time we release one or some of these scheduled changes early when a word or set of words is getting extra attention. So because the ideological liberal socialist Democrats decided to play around with this terminology, suddenly Merriam-Webster had to run in and change the definition. And because Merriam-Webster said that they changed the definition, suddenly the whole English language and everyone has to adapt to it. In this case, we released the update for sexual preference when we noticed that the entries for preference and sexual preference were being consulted in connection with the SCOTUS hearings. So they literally changed the meaning of a word or of a phrase solely because the Democrats decided that they were going to hone in on that during the SCOTUS hearings. It says a revision made in response to an entry's increased attention differs only in celerity. As always, all revisions reflect evidence of use. So if somebody on the right if a group on the right or Republicans on the right wanted to change certain words, would we be able to have the same sort of power that these Democrats are receiving from Merriam-Webster? It says on Tuesday, Mazie Hirono slammed Barrett for saying she would not discriminate on the basis of sexual preference. Sexual preference is an offensive and outdated term. It is used by anti-LGBTQ activists to suggest that sexual orientation is a choice. It is not, the Hawaii Democrat said. Sexual orientation is a key part of a person's identity, Hirono said. So if it's, let's get this straight here. It's a choice. Sexual preference is an offensive and outdated term. It is used by LGBTQ activists to suggest that sexual orientation is a choice, and it's not. So you don't have a choice to, it's no longer a choice, and it's a key part of your identity. But I thought we could identify as, essentially we could identify as whatever we want. So it's not a choice for what it is that you identify as. And this is the kind of just ridiculous mental gymnastics that the left likes to play. You know, and you can't even wrap your head around what how they're trying to twist these terms here. We're being told that you can identify, literally you can identify as whatever you want, but at the same time, it's not a choice. So when somebody decides that they identify as, I can't even get, like, you can identify as whatever you want. I can't even really, the illogical thought process here is literally just mind-boggling. So it goes on to say that she said she was, quote, disappointed that the circuit court judge declined to weigh in on whether she agreed with the majority in Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court case that granted same-sex couples the right to marry. And this, like, okay, they're going to try and hammer her on the idea of gay marriage coming before the Supreme Court. How about we take a libertarian stance on this and ask, the Supreme Court, Congress, politicians, where do you find marriage in the Constitution? Marriage isn't even in the Constitution. This is an argument to get government out of marriage. If a couple wants to get together and they want to be able to, in the eyes of the law, be considered, have a union, a civil union, or however you want to say it, by all means, absolutely 100%. They should be recognized in the eyes of the law if they want to be a couple, 100%. But when it comes to marriage is something that is, to me, it's the sanctity of marriage comes through my religious institutions. I'm Christian, my wife is Jewish, but it comes through our religious institutions here. That is what marriage is about. And government has no business getting involved in marriage whatsoever. That would have been an amazing stance if Amy Coney Barrett would have looked at them and said, look, that's how marriage should be reflected when it comes to government. So it says here the LGBT community should be rightly concerned whether you would uphold their constitutional right to marry. So constitutional right to marry, where do you see it? Again, where in the Constitution is there a right to get married? But again, this is coming from the Hirono from Hawaii, who's a complete buffoon. I certainly didn't mean and would never mean to use a term that would cause any offense in the LGBTQ community. So if I did, I greatly apologize for that, said Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court nominee. And then, of course, Booker has to weigh in. And he says, in using that, he says here, Booker asked Barrett about her use of the term again. And then Amy Coney Barrett replied, in using the word, I did not mean to imply that it is not an immutable characteristic or that it's solely a matter of preference, she said. I fully respect the rights of the LGBTQ community. Obergefell was an important precedent in the court. And this is just utterly mind-boggling. The depravity of the left and the Democrats, and how low they're willing to stoop to try to drag this Supreme Court nominee through the mud. And we really have to take a step back and just look at this logically and really understand what exactly the Democrats are doing here, because this is a pretty pathetic game that they're playing. So thank you guys for checking out my video. Again, please feel free to subscribe to my Millennial Conservative YouTube channel. And if you guys like my videos, please, like them, share them, and get them out there. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for watching.